led by the Secretary and the Researcher. Allow me to take this opportunity to formally open the meeting and extend a word of welcome to the leadership of PRASA. Allow me to take this opportunity that there has been a number of changes that has been effected. And a word of welcome. There was the board that was PRASA expanded, and then administrators that has been appointed, but because of the ruling of the court, the administrator could no longer continue with the work. But be that as it may, the work must continue. The select committee invited PRASA against a number of unfolding activities that are taking place, which definitely impact on its strategic outlook. And we share belief to say that focus in terms of its strategic outlook of the rail as the public transport, operating in an integrated transport network while providing public value. However, as I indicated, this has been impacted by a number of challenges in the form of vandalism of the infrastructure, which has necessitated the select committee to while at the apex of our focus is to ensure that indeed PRASA continues to play its critical role in terms of its strategic focus, but also its role in terms of the infrastructure as a contributing platform in terms of the economic recovery of the country. But of immediate now is the challenges that are engulfing our PRASA, which has necessitated us to call this meeting. And with those opening remarks, can we note the apology from the Minister and also the apology from the Deputy Minister? In terms of members, is there any apologies that we received, Kipeda?
So far, there is still that one of Honorable Khai, who we all know that is not feeling well. Then we hope he will join us when it's well. And also Honorable Matebula. She says she is busy with the party work today. Thank you, Chair. Those are the apologies that we've received.
Thank you. Indeed, let's take this opportunity to express again well wishes to Honorable Khai. We wish him a speedy recovery as the select committee. Those are the apologies, honorable members. Can we then, without any waste of time, then allow the committee secretary to introduce the team from PRASA that will be giving a briefing to us. Committee secretary.
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, what I will do, since I see the DG, Mr. Alec Muyemi of the department, I think we need to acknowledge him. But I will hand over to the head of the delegation from PRASA, then at least I'm going to do all, the necessary introductions of the team.
Let's give over to the DG. I suspect the DG might, in the absence of the minister and the deputy minister, probably have some opening remarks to do. DG.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon, DG.
And good afternoon to the honorable members of the Select Committee. Chair, we really have no comments to make. We are here to support the PRASA and the entity to respond to the issues the committee would want to engage with them on the matters that have been raised, and we will, where necessary, also respond to any questions the committee may have on the department. But yes, the entity will make a presentation itself on the security aspects and the vandalism that is there. Thanks, Chairperson.
Can you introduce the team, DG?
Okay, Chair, it's myself, and from the department, I'm with two staff members in the Office of the Director General, and from the side of the ministry, I have Ms. Tandiwe Mpondo, who is the Parliamentary Liaison Officer of the Minister. And then from the side of PRASA, we have the Accounting Authority of PRASA, Mr. Badisa Matseho. And Mr. Matseho is accompanied by Mr. Zwelake Mayaba, who is the head in the office of, an executive in the office of the Accounting Authority. And there is also General Tebogo Rakau, who is the head of security at PRASA. And there is from the office of the Accounting Authority as well, we've got Ramo Khokhanye Khokhi, as he's popularly known. And we also have Mr. Kagiso Moleme, and we also have Mr. Hisham Emeran, who is the CEO of PRASA Rail, PRASA Technical, I'm sorry. And we believe that that is the complete delegation for today. I hope I have not left out anybody. I believe Mr. J.D. De Villiers is also part of the meeting, who is the Chief Director responsible for rail infrastructure in our department, and also the Chief of Staff of the Minister Mbalula, Mr. Tsulufelo Lejaga, is also part of the delegation today. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DG. Okay, then give over to the team, the head of the delegation, to start the presentation. I believe it will be the Accounting Authority.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Select Committee on Transport. I just want to bring on the presentation, as Murphy would have it, just before I have to start. I met with challenges here. Let me just try and do that, Chair. There we go. I think now I do not have full control of. Sure. Zoom is a bit of a tricky one. Companies or the Select Committee Secretary, do you have a copy of the presentation? Perhaps you can flight it quickly for us so that we can not waste time.
No, well, you can flight now because you were out of the meeting.
You. Thank you very much. I guess that's why I'm saying there's a bit of a challenge on me using Zoom. We used to the famous MS Teams. Once again, good afternoon, members of the Select Committee. I also wish to thank the DG of Transport, Mr. Marek Mwemi, for obviously providing his customary support, especially as we navigate through these difficult times and trying to turn PRASA around to its glorious days. I also wish to confirm, Chair, that and honorable members, that I'm accompanied by individuals that are quite relevant to the conversation that we have been asked to come and brief you on, which centers around the scourge of vandalism that we've experienced at PRASA over an extended period, but also to speak to the plans that we have come up with, some of which are still to happen, but most of which are in motion. I've also brought in members, as you rightly have heard, that we've got the CEO of one of our divisions called PRASA Technical, Mr. Emran, who will also support the conversation on how we also continue to prepare recovery of our infrastructure, resumption of services, and as well as pertinent questions that we anticipate around our modernization program across key assets, namely our pairway, stations, and everything else that supports our business. So if I can be allowed to go through the purpose of the presentation, and this is strictly taken from the brief that we received, is to provide the Select Committee on Transport of the National Council of Provinces on the to highlight the incidents of vandalism and security interventions that we've since initiated, to also brief you on the partnership between ourselves, PRASA, and the South African Police Service. As I mentioned, we've also added a few slides that would speak to the resumption of train services, corridors that otherwise have opened, and those that we plan to open in the nearest future, as well as PRASA's compliance to COVID-19 protocols ever since we resumed service when level 3, I can imagine, was announced or pronounced. And of course, we will conclude with having a discussion with yourself and or fielding a number of questions that we anticipate. Perhaps maybe to start off and remind Select Committee members, Honorable Select Committee members, PRASA has two of mandates. The main one being that says we have been mandated to ensure that at the request of the National Department of Transport, who is our sole shareholder, that we ensure rail commuter services that are provided within, to and from the Republic in the public interest, and of course, in consultation again with the National Department of Transport to provide long-haul passenger rail and bus services within, to and from the Republic, again, in terms of the applicable act and regulations. There's also a second mandate, and that mandate, in essence, speaks to our ability or leveraging our ability to generate non-core, if I define it as that, revenue by exploiting the assets that we otherwise would acquire as we go along. Mainly, those will be focused on property investments, and that is why you would know that there is an entity that we have, but again, there are also conversations that we're having internally around how we want to see that happening quite effectively and efficiently. There's also a further requirement that we carry out as we do what we are meant to do, given these two mandates that I've just shared with you, and that is for PRASA, will have due regard for all key government priorities around social, economic, and transport policy objectives. So as we do that, which we have been charged with, we remain very mindful that everything else that we do does touch on government's main and core objectives as well, or policy objectives. Also to share a little bit about PRASA's mandatory assets, mandatory in the sense that by definition we are Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, and of course that we support, that which we're supposed to do is our rail network. We've got a rail network that extends in excess of 2,200 kilometers across the Republic. We've got in the region of 530 train stations. Some, by the way, those that we've accounted for are those that have since been transferred to PRASA at the incorporation of the entity back in 2009, I guess it was. There's still a couple of stations that are still within the ambit of Transnet, but I guess there will be further conversations around having those transferred duly to PRASA so that we then can continue to provide the requisite service. There's also, in terms of our rolling stock, because we run two of main services, namely those through the metro service through our Metro Rail brand, we've got in the region of 4,398 coaches. And for the long haul service, the main, what we call Fitoloza main, we have in the region of 1,303 coaches. To support those coaches, we've got in the system for MLPs in the region of 122 locos or locomotives. And we also, you'd know, honorable members, that PRASA has since invested in a program to renew its rolling stock. And this is the project that is led by a consortium, namely Kibela. And with that project, it is envisaged that at the end of it, we would see PRASA taking delivery of 600 trains, which in essence, given the calculations, are made up of 3,600 coaches. Also, by way of just sharing, we've got a total rail network, if you include transnets, of in excess of 20,000 kilometers to cover the length and breadth of South Africa. To date, just to speak to the new rolling stock, we have received 30 train sets that have been delivered to PRASA, that have been commissioned and have been tested and commissioned, and they are at various locations across our network. To get to the crux of our conversation today, during the latter part of the year 2019, the former Board of Control of PRASA took a decision, which, by the way, was informed by the findings by both the Auditor General as well as the Public Protector, to say the security contracts that PRASA had entered into had been deemed irregular and unlawful. To that extent, the Board of Control then took a decision to terminate those contracts. These contracts were subsequently terminated at the end of September 2019. And of course, as one would expect, the security companies took PRASA to court to interdict the termination of security contracts as had been decided upon by Board of Control. And in December 2019, we received court judgments from both the Gauteng North High Court as well as the Western High Court to stop the termination. The ruling, however, on the Western Cape side required PRASA to implement alternative security measures before these terminations could be effected. Whilst on the Gauteng side, we were actually required to grant the security companies sufficient time to terminate. In essence, we provided them with 3 months notice for them to terminate. And the reason I'm actually speaking to this is we're in a conversation around our infrastructure, especially on the Gauteng side, has been widely and in fact more affected than you otherwise would compare. Although in other regions there are other issues that have seized PRASA in regards to the integrity of our network. To proceed, in March 2020, PRASA then engaged the South African Police Service on security interventions, given the fact that now our network was exposed, given the decision to terminate these private security companies in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, as well as along our mainline passenger services, MLPs. We have been engaged in efforts to try and implement through an emergency procurement process to at least recover services with private security entities to assist us, and those efforts have been met with either the processes being non-responsive from a procurement point or where some have been challenged and litigated upon by these former private security companies that are fighting for reinstatement. We then, as PRASA, when we were then to start the resumption of services, when we went into level 3 in July of 2020, to embark on a drive to directly employ 3,100 security officers. And honorable members, we purposely use the word of employ and not necessarily or recruit. That's the word we would use, and not the word in-source, because in-source would then imply that we were casting our eyes solely on the former security service providers. It is also one thing I need to put across to say, PRASA has since also suffered this vandalism under the watch of these private security companies. So in essence, the decision based on obviously the public protectors and AG's findings did not necessarily suggest that besides the fact that they were talking to the irregularity of the appointment, but fact of the matter is the performance of those security officers of private security companies in actual fact was not satisfactory. This election process is underway. It commenced in July of 2020, and we continue to bring on these security officers into PRASA. They will become PRASA full-time employees. The process does have a bit of challenges from time to time because of the criteria that we've set. The criteria that we've set is not, as some circles would suggest, prohibitory. We are trying to ensure that people that we bring into PRASA in the first instance have the requisite credentials to perform the duties that we are engaged in to do so. So hence, it is not just picking up any other person that is seeking employment. However, we are recruiting duly accredited security with, by the way, the proper credentials in terms of vetting and other skill set that are sought given the security plan that you're going to share with yourselves. I wish to go straight into the vandalism and theft of infrastructure. How we plan to go about the presentation, or remember, with your permission, is I will from time to time tap on the expertise of the respective officials from PRASA that are responsible for this. So General Debohoraka would come in where detail into his plans would need to be explained to you. We'll also tap into the expertise of our PRASA Tech CEO, where we speak to infrastructure related type of interventions on our part. Going straight into the presentation or the slides around vandalism and theft at PRASA. Honorable members, PRASA has faced what one could categorize in many words, anything from theft, vandalism, but in the main, there are instances that we deem to be that of sabotage. And this is obviously, if you look at the extent of the vandalism or damage to the infrastructure that we would observe. For example, in incidents of arson, it couldn't be that there was an attempt to steal anything other than destroying it. In the incidents where we observed a station that is literally flattened down to the extent of chipping off tiles, one can only suggest that these are acts of sabotage to actually suggest that PRASA does not have the ability to defend and protect its network. We have also seen these incidents escalating to unprecedented levels more during the lockdown period. So besides the fact that our porous network as a result of not having private security entities or security at all deployed, the national lockdown period also saw criminals seeing it as an opportunity to then advance their costs. There are a couple of important considerations that we've also taken in ourselves to try and understand exactly what is it that we are faced with. What I would like to say at this point is we are going to share a few plans with you that we've had, but they would center largely around the deployment of security. But the deployment of security alone is not a solution for the effective combating of theft and vandalism, and to an extent, the sabotage that we've experienced. We require critical capability in information gathering, in the investigations of non-ferrous theft in the country at large, to follow through on cases that otherwise people are apprehended with the National Prosecution Authority. We have to deploy conventional and non-conventional methods, by the way, of protecting the operating assets and our train sets through the deployment of static mobile patrols, because we just now realize that the deployment of static and mobile patrols are not as effective as it's always been the case in the past, because what we are now facing is concerted attacks by even armed criminals and what we suspect are large, well-organized groups. So in that regard, PRASA is in the process of developing the required capability to mitigate and combat this theft, as well as vandalism of its infrastructure. Just to share, and as we go, you would see the extent of the damage of vandalism we experience, the damage to our infrastructure on the pictures that I'm flighting. And what we are saying is we've experienced this theft and vandalism, very rightly so, in most of our corridors, even those that are closed. Not closed because of COVID, but because of operational constraints and or rationalization. You would find incidents where, because we are in the process of also disposing of old train sets, whilst they are still either in depots or in yards, the criminals find it convenient to then attack. So we're going to be forced to also, as an organization, channel our efforts, whilst we obviously dispose of these assets, to protect, in essence, assets that are obsolete. It has come to that. The occurrences that we also have seen has not stopped even with the resumption of service. And that is why the resumption of service, as colleagues will explain, in most instances, it is met with this challenge of vandalism, where in certain corridors cannot be opened, largely because of the inability on our part to keep or to have those corridors operational. What we then continue to do on our part, and this is where we talk of an integrated approach to the problems that we have, integrated in the sense of all of PRASA's divisions, from PRASA Rail, which is the core, PRASA Tech, which supports this infrastructure, PRASA Crest, which is more of a landlord in terms of taking care of stations in the main and some of our commercial properties, as well as the security team. Is each corridor that is currently opened as we resume service is assessed daily, and where required, an emergency plan is put together and monitored daily to ensure that we don't necessarily resume service only to expose ourselves. You would also have probably been appraised that PRASA has been seen removing some of our overhead electrical infrastructure down. And this is done for two reasons. One is, of course, because it's been damaged and it remains exposed. We are trying to cap a continuation of thieves continuing to remove it. So we're salvaging it for one, but two, because we then want to introduce diesel locals to at least be able to resume services whilst we then overhaul our entire electrical infrastructure. And these are efforts that are met in most instances with challenges. However, the team are all up to that task. Where there is no power or no power line rehabilitation will take place until security is implemented. And I think this is the most important part of what we need to share with you. We have taken a resolution as an entity that it would actually be a futile exercise to expedite the overhaul of our infrastructure in instances where security is not present. However, what we've then said to the team as an instruction is we need to expedite it, and in instances where you appoint contractors to perform remedial work, that they actually bring on security contingent work so that we secure as we fix, and not necessarily lay out cables as an example, only to wake up the following morning with nothing. I just want to share in a couple of slides, I think there's one or two that are coming through, some of the challenges that we face, honorable committee members, some of which I could have spoken to, but I just wanted to highlight them so that it's clear that PRASA is indeed challenged. Senseless attacks on employees has been widely experienced, where even those that we've deployed are attacked by armed people, to the extent some of them have actually been met with shots. We have seen an increase in high demand for ferrous and non-ferrous metals. And I don't say that this in any positive manner, because then our platforms are seen as a source to service this high demand. We have seen high volumes of crime, theft, and malicious damage to property across the network. Again, I did mention that some of these incidents, as an organization, we've characterized them as sabotage. Pre-COVID, pre-determination of these contracts that I referred to, we also had observed that the quality of service by private security companies did not meet our requirements. And I guess going forward, this is an area where if we go back that route, that we really should put an effort around ensuring that service level agreements are met, and where they are not met, punitive measures are put in place. We have seen incidents where the public, because of our open network, because of damaged cables that could otherwise be hanging, that you have people that are illegally killed with these infrastructure. Even those, obviously, that form part of the thieves have also been electrocuted. We have also observed that we are very thin on intelligence gathering, and obviously, even to the extent of the requisite support by other law enforcement agencies, we are not able to get through pretty quickly. I did mention this one around the quality of service, but also to the extent that these private security companies do not necessarily come in to create what we term strategic partnerships, other than, of course, and without necessarily laying any form of blame, because again, it is also upon us to manage these contracts adequately. So these are some of the challenges. I won't dwell too much on the challenges that I now am fighting, because these are mostly internal challenges within PRASA. And there are concerted efforts through various programs. For example, we are revising our operating model to ensure that the security function, as an example, in this instance, is lean, mean, and targeted, and it does respond to all of our requirements across the network. So all of these challenges that are listed here, without going through each and every one of them, we have given strict instruction to the Chief Security Officer to resolve as a matter of agency, to allow for him and those that need to support him to carry out that which they need to carry out. These are some of the required actions that we've also instructed the team to look into. If you go across our network, it's no secret that lighting is a bit of a challenge. The environmental management of our yards leaves nothing to be desired. We have to also reactivate our CCTV network to the extent that it properly complements the warm bodies that would otherwise deploy wherever we deploy them. We have to also look at demolishing the dilapidated structures and not necessarily leave them to vagrants to do what they would otherwise do when they are met with structures that are deserted, otherwise, but rendering a reputational damage on PRASA, because of course there would probably be a notion that we don't have to guard them. We also are engaged in urgently disposing of scrap, and scrap would refer to old transets that are retired, and this, by the way, includes all assets across all of our businesses, and includes buses as well that have gotten to a stage where they require disposal. But more importantly, we need to beef up our security personnel. I'm going to request General to take us through the following slides on our security plan, and I will support him adequately in that regard. General. General Tebo Farakang, are you still with us?
Okay, thank you, Chairperson DG, members of the Select Committee, and the AA and colleagues. The plan, which has been crafted in order to deal with the scourge of vandalism in PRASA, some of the aspects have been mentioned on the AA, but is basically to create internal capability in the form of armed response, in the form of CCTV monitors, and also in the form of ensuring that we've got an armed capability or armed response within the business. Then we also look at, in terms of technology, the introduction of e-guarding solution. I'll come to details at a later stage during the presentation. And to address the lack of investigation and intelligence capability, it's also to in-source or contract specialized investigation to assist us with that form of support or intervention. Especially if you look at most of the cases which we have lost, most of the cases were declared as undetected solely because crime scene in most of instances was contaminated and the statements are not properly constructed. So that investigation capability will assist us in that regard. And we're also looking at the deployment of remote piloted aircraft. These are basically what are known as drones. This is a new terminology which is being used. Next. Can we move to the next slide, please? These interventions which I've spoken about will serve as multipliers to enable that security response to theft and vandalism. It's done in a very safe manner. And this will also be complemented by the establishment or the building of the walls within the corridors, with the focus currently being on the Mabopane and Central Line. I hope my colleague Isham will give more details in terms of those two. And also as part of ensuring that...
I apologize, General, on this one. If I can just come in here, honorable members. I thought, let me just come in around this part. And the reason for that, this is a recent development. And in fact, it carries with it certain direct instructions on what ought to be done on our part. What we had done as PRASA is we had applied for financial injection from the Treasury. And to this extent, a variant was approved to the tune of 900 million rands, which the bulk of it, if not most of it, will be channeled towards the security interventions that the General is currently sharing with yourselves. So in the main, what we've requested should be done as a matter of agency, so that wherein we are exposed, we are able to then bring on the requisite security provisions, is to participate in security contracts of other SOEs that otherwise would have the requisite and proven service to deal with what we are faced with, and this is something that will be done as a matter of agency. Apologies, General. I thought, let me just confirm that to the select committee members. You can continue.
Just to sensitize the team that they have until 1 o'clock, so that as you share the responsibilities, we must be mindful of the
Time.
of the limitation that we have. Yes. Over to you, Digi.
No, thank you very much. Let's go through General so that we meet the timeline.
Okay, thank you. Let's please go to the next slide. Back one, please. Yeah, basically what we intend to do is to have what we call a sustained surveillance over our network, and that we can achieve by implementing the measures as indicated on the slide. We've got on the left-hand side the GPRS, video surveillance and alarm, which we call e-guarding. This is already out, will be out to the market by tomorrow or latest on Friday. We're expecting the contract to be signed around November this year. The intention is to ensure that all the critical infrastructure within the segments, in terms of substations, in terms of high sites, have got what we call a self-defense mechanism. So we've already dealt with that one. It's now out to the market, and we should be starting with protection of those assets within the first week or second week of December. Then the second one is to have the drones. The specifications are already approved within the business. It should just go to one level before it goes out to the market. That will help us with what we call sustained development. And if you look on the right, I'm not sure if my pointer, you are able to see it. It's what we call Aerostats. These are balloons which are normally installed with cameras. As from the previous slides, you have also learned that most of our yards do not have illumination, which might also take some time to bring it to a serviceable level. So with Aerostats, it gives you a sustained surveillance over a period of time. It's been lifted with a lithium gas, and most of our yards, we go in to implement this system because it can be fitted with cameras, which gives you a radius of about 5 to 6 kilometers, including thermal cameras, which can work at night. So that is the integration of technology, which we're talking about, which we should be able to give us the sustained surveillance solution. Next slide. Then to cap the interventions which PRASA has introduced, we also have got an integrated operation which we have launched with the police as from the 17th of August this year. That integrated approach has pillars. The first pillar is to address intelligence gathering and analysis and coordination. It's solely within the police domain, supported by SSA and also crime intelligence. Then pillar 2 is what we call proactive approach. That's where PRASA features most. We've got to ensure that with the new recruits we're employing, we're able to do the stop and searches at various established points or identify high risk points and deploy our members at strategic positions. Then pillar 3 is what we call the combat approach. This is mainly dealt with by the police. And then pillar 4, it's a reactive approach through detection. So where we've arrested the procedures now is that before the suspects can even be taken to court, you'll have the detection service and also intelligence briefing those suspects or debriefing those suspects which have been arrested so that we get more information to can assist us to deal with pillar 2 in terms of a proactive approach. Then the last pillar is communication and liaison, which is important because rail infrastructure passes through different communities. So we want to make communities part of protection of these facilities. And that will be done with a proper communication and also ensuring that the successes and failures are also projected to different communities so that we can elicit their support and assistance. And the intention is to create a safer commuter environment. Next slide. Yeah, this slide just shows you the number of services which are part of this operational concept. I won't dwell much into them. Next slide. This slide we can also pass. Most of the aspects within here have already been dealt with. This just shows you the number of incidents which have been experienced. It links to the first slides which were presented by the AA. You can see the escalation during week 28 and also week 31. That is basically between May and June within this year. That's where we have experienced most of our incidents. Next slides. And it also shows you per province the number of criminal cases which have already been registered with the police. It shows you the number is basically alarming. We can virtually form a police station within PRASA with a number of incidents which have been registered on a monthly basis. And we can see now as from July and August, we have seen a decline in the number of cases which have been registered with the police. Next slide. Then this is the update with regards the employment, permanent employment with security officials within PRASA. Basically, we're going to re-advertise over 500 posts, and the advertisements have already been issued in Eastern Cape. Gauteng will be going out today and tomorrow, and also KZN, the re-advertisements will be going out. So basically, this is to say we did not achieve what we're looking for, especially in terms of physical security and armed response. The only category where we had sufficient numbers it's in terms of monitoring control rooms, except for mainline passenger service where we couldn't fill the 12 posts. Those will also be re-advertised. Next.
Thank you, General.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to invite and Chair of the Select Committee as well as Select Committee Secretary. We've also been joined by two of our COs, one for PRASA Rail, Ms. Nosipo Damasan. I just thought let me acknowledge her presence as well as the CO for PRASA Crest. They will enably support Mr. Amram, as he takes us through these slides around interventions on infrastructure. Isham.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and honorable colleagues. Good afternoon. My name is Scm Challenges. I'm the CEO of the PRASA Technical Division, responsible for the infrastructure and rolling stock components of the business, supporting the PRASA Rail Division. Good afternoon also to the DG and officials and colleagues in the meeting. I think just briefly, cognizant of time, is that from a technical perspective, we obviously focused around the maintenance, rehabilitation and upgrade of our infrastructure. And there's various levels of maintenance and rehabilitation that needs to happen, depending on the level of theft that we have experienced. In cases where we do have the security plan in place and the extent of the incidents and the theft, either the recovery can be done by the internal teams, and that can normally be done on a short-term basis, or depending on the extent, if it's quite significant, we need to rely on outsourcing some of that services to service providers. If we can move to the next slide, please, Anissa. Yeah, I think just to highlight, that's the point I've made, and to highlight that there are at a regional level, we do have these frequent inspections of our infrastructure, and as well as at our depot levels, where our trains are being staged and maintained, that the team work very closely with our security department in terms of inspecting these facilities. Next slide. Yeah, I don't know if my colleague wants to come in, but this is more around some of the interventions around our stations that is really being dealt with by the PRASA Corporate Real Estate Division. So I'm not sure if my colleague wants to comment, but I can move on. That's more on the stations. Yeah,
let's move on.
We'll move on for the sake of time. In terms of the corridor recovery plan, and I'm sure the honourable members are fully aware around the priority corridors that have been reported in previous meetings, as well as escalated through the Minister of Transport, his office, as well as even captured in the SONA by our Honourable President. And here I'm referring to the Central Line in Cape Town, Central Line Corridor. And that's a corridor that feeds the Metro Southeast in Khayelitsha, as well as the Mitchells Plain areas. And then Mabopane corridor in Gauteng North in Tshwane. Two of our priority corridors that are central within our operations. These corridors have been, if I can call it, out of service since the last year, towards the end of last year, where we had to stop services on these corridors because of the extent of the theft and vandalism on these corridors. And we have communicated around that in terms of the time frames that we were looking at recovering these corridors. The time frames on the slide is outdated. I just need to express that to the honourable members. But initially, and this was pre-lockdown, if one look at the initial time frames on the Central Line, we were hopeful that already towards the end of this year, we would have resumed with the rail service, and then a full service in 2021 on the Central Line, and similar time frames for Mabopane. But since the beginning of this year, pre-lockdown, quite a number of issues have impacted this program, and that includes, I think we're all very aware of the impact that COVID would have had, the hard lockdown that we've had over the past few months, but not just around that, also technical capacity challenges, internal, both at engineering level, as well as some of our SCM supply chain management processes that we've also had some challenges. And then unfortunately, during this lockdown, we also then witnessed further theft and vandalism. So the scope of work on these corridors also increased quite significantly. And the revised time frames, as I've indicated, honourable members, those time frames are not the latest. We do update this on a weekly basis, but we are looking at providing interim transport solutions on both the Central Line and Mabopane, and we are targeting November this year to have an interim solution. In the case of the Central Line, it's a hybrid between a bus and a rail service. And then on Mabopane, we're exploring the option of a diesel train service in the interim. But moving towards phase 1 and phase 2, which is bringing back an electric service, the new timeframes are taking us well into the new calendar year. We are looking towards the latter part of 2021, sort of October, November, for both corridors to implement a limited electrical rail service. And then phase 2, which is the full rail service, we are looking at early in 2022. And honorable members, we will share those timeframes with you. I apologize for the error on these dates here. We move to the next slide. Yeah, I have touched on the issue of the delays that we have experienced and the SCM, so we can move. Very important as part of this is stakeholder communications. Certainly before lockdown, we've had a number of sessions along the corridor with key stakeholders. We're also ensuring that momentum we're picking up now again with engaging with communities, with operators in those areas to ensure that we have got all the stakeholders on board as we start rolling out the infrastructure recovery on these corridors. One of the key things, and I should have mentioned it, when we look at those timeframes, in addition to restoring and recovering these corridors where we have really witnessed the stripping of our electrical signaling infrastructure, in the case particularly of the Central Line in the Western Cape, we've also got the issue of encroachment that we need to deal with. A number of locations along the corridor, we have seen illegal settlements in the rail reserve. Shacks have been built on top of the railway lines, and we're working very closely under the leadership of the DGs at Transport, Public Works and Human Settlements, guided by the ministers, in terms of having a sustainable solution in dealing with the relocation of these informal settlements so that we can undertake the necessary work that we need to do. That obviously has a significant impact in our ability to undertake the works, as we need to ensure that the resettlement does happen speedily for us to resume services. These are just some of the key aspects that I think form part of restoring services, not only on the two corridors I've mentioned, but this is at a national level about rolling out integrated ticketing systems, the deployment and rollout plan for the new trains. These are the Gibela trains. We refer to it as the blue trains, the blue and grey trains. We also, and just recently, we also launched the Nerve Centre with the Minister and the key officials in Cape Town, in Bellville. We've also got the Nerve Centre here in Gauteng, in Kalfontein. And these nerve centres are critical to ensure efficient and safe management of our train operations. And I'm sure if the honourable members have not had the opportunity to visit any of these nerve centres, I think it's something that I think should be and could be arranged to see the state-of-the-art centres that we have rolled out in Gauteng and Cape Town as we speak. The modernisation of our stations, that's an ongoing thing, upgrading the stations. I just want to point out so that the honourable members are aware, the station modernisation program that we have at PRASA, we've had to cancel those contracts, and that was because that was found to be irregular, and it was also at the advice that we received from Treasury and our principals in that regard. And we're in the process now of reprioritising and looking at the rollout of the station modernisation program in particular. Linked to the nerve centres is we are re-signalling our networks across the country, and this is quite important. If one looks at the current signalling technology that we have, before we started this program, over 80% of that signalling technology was already obsolete. Does not mean it was not working, but certainly if there was the issue of spares and maintenance when dealing with obsolete technology, it becomes not only expensive, but also finding the skills to maintain that technology becomes quite critical. I've mentioned the issue of the electrical infrastructure that have been severely impacted, not only the overhead traction equipment that have been vandalized, but also our substations have been stripped. And unfortunately, in the case of rehabilitating and refurbishing substations, there are also long lead times that go with that in terms of receiving the necessary equipment and transformers. So some of them do have some additional time frames that one has to build in as part of that process. And very important is the communication at a platform level, also with our customers, improving that, becoming customer-centric is critical in terms of our way forward. I'm not sure if colleagues want to speak, but we're also looking very closely at the business model around our mainline passenger service, which has also experienced significant challenges, not only from a infrastructure and fleet availability point of view, but also in terms of looking at the key corridors that one needs to roll out from a mainline passenger service and integrating that as well with a long distance bus rail services. And to support all of this is to ensure that we do have the necessary quality, the QMS systems in place, and we have a process now where we're looking at implementing the various ISO standards, quality management systems to assist in this regard. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, in the case where we do not have our signaling system up and running, we need to rely on manual authorization of our trains. And this brings in not only the risk in terms of safe operations, but also extended travel time and train delays by implementing manual authorizations. It is, though, seen as an acceptable way in the absence of having your signaling system in place. So while it does bring challenges, it is a manner for still controlling trains in the absence of a signaling system. As we've mentioned earlier, we also have some SCM challenges, particularly around also bringing back some of our trains back into service. You saw the slide earlier by the AA in terms of the number of trains that we have got, and these are the existing trains, 4,300 coaches, which equates to approximately 280 train sets, which we should have in service. But as we speak today, we have in the order of 80 train sets that are currently operational. And we do have some challenges to ensure that we can bring back many of these train sets back into service. And some of that relates to the issue also of entering into long-term contracts around rolling stock, and as well as some of our infrastructure projects. These are just some of the key areas in terms of our CapEx funding that I think it's focused on, in terms of infra, the train sets, as well as the locomotives. Again, one of our key challenges around the locomotives, the shortage of that for not only our ability to run the mainline passenger services, but as alluded to earlier, if one takes Gauteng as an example, we are not able to run any electric trains on the Gauteng network due to the theft and vandalism on the network. And at the moment, we have to resort to an interim measure of running diesel train services. In other words, we've got our coaches being hauled by diesel locomotives as an interim measure. That obviously brings additional cost to the business because going forward, and the strategy is to ensure that we can bring our electric trains, which is the most effective and efficient way to run commuter rail services. And then the issue around the operational staff funding is there as well. I think we can move to the next slide in the sake of time.
Let's go to...
yeah. I think these are just some of the key programs. I think we've touched on some of them as we went through that, but I can hand back to you if you want to carry on with these slides.
I think with the guidance of the chair of the select committee as well as the select committee secretary, We could actually maybe omit to go through each and every one of these slides because they form part of the pack. But we'll take questions perhaps if there are any specific to any of those programs that we've included and you will find that some of them have been spoken to already. So rather let's not rehash them and maybe go straight to an engagement. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee for your attention, as well as the company, also the committee secretary. Thanks.
And the DG for taking us through the presentation. You are correct. I think the various slides that referred to the 12 months program were indeed covered. I want to believe that they are just part of the elaboration in terms of what you have indicated. So let's then open the floor for engagement. Honorable Landsman, Honorable Dango, I think Honorable Prataseth, and then Honorable Dango. In that fashion. Honorable Landsman.
Okay, I was muted, Chair. It's better. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, good day, honorable members. I want to check, is it the board chairperson or is it the CEO that we are having with us?
From PRASA.
The board.
Yeah.
The board was dissolved, and the administrator.
Or is the ones that will be appointed? I hear in the news the minister will appoint it by Friday.
Is the accounting officer.
Okay, from my side, so it means next week there's a possibility of us having the board again. From my side, I want to check issues relating to any public protector report on any findings, issues relating to the Auditor General report, apart from only the ones which are mentioned, the one of security tender, all other findings from the Auditor General, from the Public Protector. How far are they? Where are we now by implementation, if there is any? What action has been taken from the side? That's why I was asking if it's the board or it's management. On the culprits or the people that are misusing the institution. Action, which action has been taken? We don't want to hear it only on the TV. We want to see action on paper that say this case was opened, this case was opened, this case was opened. How far is it? When are we going to get it? Those officials that were part and parcel of the mess must account. It cannot be that we just see it on media. So we need those answers. The same report we are getting about insourcing, it's a report we got more than a year back from the very same institution of insourcing of security guards. So we are asking, please come back to us with the detailed time frames. And if there was any PPE, we don't hear you talking about PPE, tenders or corruption or allegations. Did PRASA have no way involved of any PPE, tenders, or so that we can know where we are standing? No, PRASA was not part of the 8 months of COVID-19. We cannot only talk the one of security, left, right, center, when it is 5% of the budget. Let's go to the other issues also that matter. Let's go public protector report. Let's get the answers. Let's go to Auditor General report. Let's get answers. What I want to check from my side is that given PRASA's recruitment process to employ 3,100 security guards to protect its rail infrastructure and other assets, which includes insourcing the security function. The recent appointment of 596 platoon marshals, whose main task is to ensure passengers comply with COVID-19 regulations, trains, and stations. Is there specialized training for these platoon marshals and security personnel? If so, Is there a particular accredited institution responsible? And are these funds allocated for the function? If not, why? We need to know everything that is happening, is it above board? Is the things done according to law? Is it done according to national treasury guidelines? We must not be told tomorrow or 2 days later, no, we did a shortcut because of time frames. There's no more time frames. Follow the law. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Landsman. Honorable Tim Pratisa.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. Chair, I want to get into, you see, Chair, I'm getting old. I need to put glasses on now. Chair, just a quick note, the joint sitting starts at 3 o'clock. That's as per the order paper that I received today. So I think we have a little bit of time, which is good. Chair, when we deal with PRASA, one thing that comes to mind is the Criminal Amendment Matters Bill was passed on the 15th of December 2015, and it came into effect on the 1st of June 2016. You may remember that bill enacted extremely harsh legislation for any person who vandalized or stole infrastructure. And in actual fact, that act, which I'm sure PRASA are familiar with, enabled persons who had vandalized and stolen infrastructure, which includes the electric lines related to the railways and everything we're discussing today, could receive a prison sentence up to 30 years, extremely harsh, and also, if it was found to be a company involved, could receive a fine of up to 100 million rand. So my first question is, how many prosecutions has PRASA managed to get under that legislation of 2016 that became effective in 2016? And whether or not, if any prosecutions did happen in the last 4 years or so, why was there not a huge media campaign about it? Because you can imagine, Chair, that if there is some young person who decides it might be fun thing this weekend to settle a life to a train, and then they are actually prosecuted and sentenced to 30 years in prison, a really good media campaign around that would be extremely deterring to any other person with a similar mindset, if it is just occasional vandalism. I think that's something that PRASA must really give us an answer on. Have there been any prosecutions in terms of the Criminal Matters Amendment Bill of 2015? It's Act 18 of 2015, if they would like to check. The other thing I wanted to touch on, Chair, is there is reference in the presentation about the maintenance of properties where PRASA operates. Now, Chair, I know from our experience here in KZN is that often when we approach PRASA for the cleaning up of railway stations and the shunting yards around railway stations and that area, we are told that no, this land belongs to Transnet. And trying to get Transnet to move in terms of clearing up land is a major problem. So I would like an answer from PRASA as to whether they have negotiated any sort of agreement with Transnet to get Transnet to clean up the land on which PRASA assets are sitting. Because, Chair, you will know, and we all know this, that derelict property, overgrown property, is an attraction to criminals, to criminal elements. Number one, from the point of view that they believe that if somebody has let this area just become overrun, overgrown, nobody cares about it, so therefore it's open game for them. And secondly, it's very easy for criminal elements to hide, Chair. And that is something that's got to be seriously affected. But the problem is PRASA have a Transnet problem. And it comes back to the question I asked last week to SAMSA, is when is Transport going to get Transnet under their banner? So that Transnet are not this body out there that always is a headache to to the Department of Transport. The third question I'd like to ask is, one of the major issues we have, Chair, is theft of cable. And theft of cable is primarily because of the copper content in the cable. And copper is stolen because it is extremely valuable. So the question to our technical experts from PRASA today is, what measures have been taken to consider alternate methods of conduction other than copper? Because brief research shows that there are other solutions out there, such as aluminium, which doesn't conduct as well, but with larger conductors can do the job. And the thing is, there's no market for aluminium, Chair, no market at all. And so that might also be a key to actually the market that encourages people to steal copper. And then, Chair, something else I would like to write a written question on is whether we should look at a regulatory authority that deals with the sale of copper in South Africa, so that small scrap dealers cannot deal with copper. They're not allowed to. And then finally, Chair, the final thing I just want to touch on is, has there been any consideration of, in terms of security protocols, of devolving security over the PRASA assets in metros to those metros? So that PRASA looks after city to city lines, but the lines in a particular metro are given to the metros themselves to look after those lines, to maintain them, and to provide the security over those lines. And of course, the budget that they would require for them. Chair, those are just some questions at this point. Thank you very much. But the first one's very important. How many prosecutions in terms of the criminal amendments matters, like the Criminal Matters Amendment Bill? That's very important. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tim Pratiseth. Honorable Dango.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I sit in a constituency that serves the heartland, the industrial heartland of this country. And the stations, the rail lines, and the copper have been stripped. I think we're in for a big shock there. If you go from Kliptown, the historic station of Kliptown has been stripped, including the building and the corrugated iron sheets. If you go on the line from Randfontein to Springs, railway stations have been stripped to the plinth. So I think we have a major problem that are facing us. And if the officials want to, I can arrange meetings for them with the communities. And the communities have made some suggestions. I've met with them. They've said, why don't we re-employ railway police that have got the powers of arrest instead of security companies that need to call the police. Let's just turn them into railway police on the railways. I think it's important. Also, Chairperson, there have been suggestions that we ask the Department of Trade and Industry to cease all contracts for export of copper and steel from scrapyards where there is no mining source that is identifiable. In that way, we could stop that, because it's quite clear that it's the copper that's being stolen, it's the copper that's being melted down, and the copper that is either being sold or re-exported. It is also now happening with the steel. But unless we look at this, the industrial heartland of the country would be in serious trouble. Chairperson, thank you very much. I understand what Honorable Tim has said, that we can go back into 3 o'clock, but you and I have to walk across the buildings to get to the assembly, to get there at 3 o'clock. We can't just log on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm sorry. I know that you and Mr. Honorable Dango are both very fit, and it will not take you 1 hour to walk across. You are very fit. You will be there in 1 minute.
Thank you, Honorable Tim. Honorable Mashori.
Chairperson, thank you very much and thank for the presentation. I don't think I can repeat the question that I want to ask. Already, Honorable Nasman was already asked my question on the issue of the PPE on the department. To save time, I think I'm covered by Honorable Nasman. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Moshuri. Honorable Boshoff.
Chair, I think Honourable Boshoff has been disconnected. Her connection at Acacia Park is very unstable.
Okay, Honorable Tim Bradiseth, Honorable Mamarkhani. Maybe from my side,
Thanks, Honorable
yes,
Chairperson.
Honorable Mamarkhani.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. Thanks, Honorable Chairperson. I'm covered.
Thank you, Honorable Mamarkhani. Maybe from my side, just in terms of the central line and also the Mabopane, it will be important probably just to share with us the revised time frame as it was indicated that the timelines that were on the screen must be revised, or they have been revised, but that was not indicated to us. It will be important just to have more elaboration on that against the background that both in the State of the Nation address, as it was indicated, and also with the President's reconstruction and development plan in terms of our economy. It has been mentioned again. It will be important just to have much more detail in terms of the timelines on this project, because the expectations that in the February State of the Nation address, the President will be reporting on progress on these two major infrastructure projects. The second one relates to the environment that the Treasury has assigned to PRASA. It will be important just to get a sense in terms of ensuring that we are not throwing money to the problem, but rather there is a much more strategic approach in terms of ensuring that this 900 million is utilized in such a manner that there is value for money. I'm raising this point against the 3 to 4 slides that were presented by the general. But at the same time, the accounting officer did indicate that in terms of monitoring of station, there is 3,100 security guards that were employed. It will be important that there's 3,100 because they were initially an integral part of the security company staff. There is no recurrence in terms of lack of laxity in terms of security at our station. But more than that, you also made reference to the partnership that we have between subs. And it will not only be subs. I think the issue of the of roping in
I
of
can
the,
wait to
of the
visit your
criminal
office.
intelligence.
Thank you.
Can you mute yourself, please? You are disrupting the proceeding.
Okay. No problem.
Honorable Dango?
Yeah, with quite a few.
Can you mute yourself? Honorable Dango? Can you mute yourself? Where I was, it was in relation to the capacity within our criminal intelligence system. It will be important that this capacity is enhanced. It's still a puzzle that today in 2019 we can have arson and malicious damage to our infrastructure to the level that it has been presented to us. But more than that, number of criminal cases across provinces that were given to us. It therefore means that the need for that collaborative effort between our security apparatus and PRASA has to be intensified, such that this chronic illness of malicious damage to our infrastructure is indeed arrested. It becomes important that within the context of the role that PRASA, particularly its infrastructure component, will be playing to the broader economic recovery. Such irritations like deliberate malicious damage to our asset is arrested, so that we do not find ourselves in a situation where we repair, our infrastructure is stolen for criminal intent, and we must again source 900 million from PRASA. I think in the last point from myself, there was a reference to the Philippi Langa area where within the jurisdiction of PRASA, the land is invaded. It was indicated that an alternative land is being sought. The question is, has it been found? And what is the timeline in terms of relocating these people? I think it will be important just to get much more details in terms of this aspect, because definitely it has a bearing in terms of the rehabilitation of our infrastructure. I see Honorable Boshoff is back. Honorable Boshoff. Thank you. Can we then give over to the team?
Chairperson.
Yes.
Chairperson. Yes, Honorable Boshoff.
Yes, Subega.
Yes, Chairperson. Honorable Boshoff, she's back, but she's complaining about the network and what she's gonna do. She's gonna write, a question on the chat. And also, Honorable Aplane also is facing the same challenge of network where he is in Transkei. He said he will write, his questions on the chat. We're still waiting for those questions. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Can we then give over to the team to respond to the questions that were posed while we are waiting for the chat questions? Over to you, Accounting Officer.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and members of the Select Committee, honorable members, for the questions. Again, we'll take turns in responding accordingly so that at least we are able to ventilate issues. I'll start off with a question that came through on investigations, or in fact that spoke to audit findings. Perhaps let me confirm that in this call, we do have the presence of the Office of the Auditor General, ably supported by Ms. Mari Naike, who actually is the lead auditor from the AG at PRASA. So, of course, everything I'm going to say cannot be outside of what she has found there. She's got a comprehensive report on a number of issues quite concerning, which also would speak to quite an adverse opinion that we seem to be facing, notwithstanding the fact that there are concerted efforts on our part to deal with them and deal with them decisively. So without necessarily going to a number of issues, I just want to highlight some of the key elements of what the AG have said to me, at least in my tenure, but I guess to the larger part of the PRASA executive team. They would point, obviously, at the issue around asset protection, which is the subject of our conversation today. And of course, on the back of the vandalism, theft, to an extent, sabotage, malicious damage to property. But of course, they would link it to our internal controls and the effectiveness thereof to be able to cap that. So they've identified all of those loopholes, which we as a team are attending to. And in fact, this plan that we are sharing with you is but one of those that are geared at attending to the issues at hand. There are other issues that the AG has pointed out around the leadership capability, leadership oversight, things that really we need to apply ourselves. When I say we, I mean myself and the executive team, to not allow things to happen under our nose, if I could quickly put it, or happen at least during our tenure. And in fact, make all the solutions that we're going to put on the table remain sustainable, even for our successors. They have also highlighted quite disturbing things around the culture, of course, of the organization. And that's, again, one of those things that we speak to. Is it that we respond timelessly to the challenges that we are facing? And I guess from where you would be sitting as the principals that have to ensure that we are accountable for our actions, we have not necessarily proven, and that's actually part of what we are working aggressively to try and resolve. There's also an element that also would speak to how we even define the business that we are in. We are in the main years, the rail operations business, but we serve customers. So what would tend to happen, and given all the expertise and competences that we have within PRASA, that the focus would be seen to be going towards the assets and not the customer. So there's also that shift in thinking that we must be mindful that yes, you need the requisite infrastructure and assets, but in the main, you are saving a customer. And this is where elements around stakeholder management and a robust stakeholder management program that we need to implement as a matter of agency. Because again, as you would have seen, one of the pillars in the security plan is stakeholder management or liaison with those that we serve, those that would see trains passing through their areas. So they've highlighted it's the number of things, honorable members, that the AG have pointed out. But if I were to speak squarely also to, there's two matters that the honorable member referred to. One was around rooting out the corruption within PRASA. It's no secret that there seems to be suggestions that there are elements of corruption within PRASA. Again, we are well geared to root out that. How? We have retained the services of the Special Investigating Odd Unit, not only to look at things that have been proclaimed by the President in the recent time, but also to look into all other areas of malfeasance within the organization. Because again, the ability to run investigations of the nature that we suspect, have held this company at ransom would require the expertise that an SIU would have. Internally, and also to support our internal audit function, we also have retained the services of SNG Grant Thornton, who also are running forensic investigations. To this end, there's a number of reports that, at least even in my tenure, have received. some of which remain inconclusive. However, there's also good recommendations on what is it that we need to do. Individuals that have been singled out, some of which are even going through disciplinary inquiry as we speak, or inquiries as we speak. If, for the benefit of the committee, because I guess that was a direct request to actually present numbers and represent names if we have to do that, because I guess we're getting into a phase of naming and shaming, that can be duly done, because I'm speaking to incidents that have just been qualified. There was a question around prosecutions to date. I'll allow General Rakau to cover that one so that I can cover areas that I can speak to, so that I allow other members to quickly tackle them. There was a query around the engagements between PRASA and Transnet. Mindful of the fact that PRASA was built out of Transnet in the early age of SARCC, and to an extent I did mention, for instance, that you do have certain pieces of infrastructure that are meant for passenger rail that otherwise are still sitting with Transnet. So those are just but one of those examples where levels of engagement between PRASA and Transnet needs to be intensified. Transnet has a new CEO. Again, even at my role or at my level, I need to really get into robust engagements with the counterparts on that end, so that we thresh out and we define areas of responsibilities adequately, and wherein there are also areas of common interest, we then also qualify how we then complement each other. So those engagements are planned for. Unfortunately, I don't even have specific dates so that I could confirm that at a later date when we meet, I would have a better report for you. There was a question around theft of copper and perhaps looking into alternative conduction methods. I can confirm that part of what the technical team has started to do is actually using aluminium as a method of conduction. However, it is not necessarily for us what I would term a solution. What we actually want to cap is just even the attempt on the infrastructure, because the unfortunate thing is how much of aluminium are we going to bring on, or in fact to the extent of having to then salvage whatever is being damaged in an attempt to get your hands on copper only to find that it's aluminium. And we don't also want to start creating another market for aluminium if ever that would be seen as something quite valuable. So the plans that we have are not of coming up with solutions that divert your attention to something else, but of not even allowing you to get in the first instance. So solutions, for instance, around bringing on walls and not brick walls and not fencing of any form, shape, and design, but to bring on concrete, reinforced concrete walls. We call them smart walls in that they are not just dead concrete walls. There are walls also fitted with security features so that we are able to know and detect areas of intrusion as would be applicable. But also the designs of those walls also are being considered so that we one, are cost effective, but two, we also don't create other unintended issues for us as part of that solution. I cannot speak at length to the devolution conversation if I were to just maybe umbrella it as such, because again, maybe the DG is in presence. He could eloquently speak to that, but suffice to say, given also his direction, that there is actually no policy around devolution. But what I can say though, because we are a recipient of a permit from the RSR, the Railway Safety Regulator, that permit does put the ultimate responsibility for the protection of assets, commuters, and employees with PRASA. So even if we were to get into a conversation around devolution, I guess it will be tailored in a manner that still acknowledges that the ultimate responsibility for the protection of assets, the commuters that use our services, as well as the employees that bring that service, are also protected and they are secured and they actually enjoy a safe and reliable service. On railway police, I'll also allow General to comment on that because we also have a view on their presence, the numbers they have to be able to cover the entire network, whether they're effective, they are, and he can comment more eloquently to that. On the time frames for Mabopane and Central Line, I do have the responsible CEO, Ms. Damasani, sorry, Nosipo. She'll kill me for misspelling her surname, but I will apologize. She can actually quickly just verbally take you through. I actually have a presentation on the program, but I don't want to get into that in the interest of time. And quickly speaking to the very man, Chair, the 900 million rands that National Treasury has approved for us, which is a conversion from the capex that we otherwise ought to have invested in our infrastructure to allow us to fund some of our operating expenses. This, yes, it has been granted to us without necessarily attaching rands and cents to specific interventions. However, the bulk of it will be channeled into immediate security provisions. One example, as I said, is we have to go and source warm bodies to be able to supplement the 3,100 security officers that we want to recruit into PRASA. Now, there's ways that we can do that, and part of this amount is going to be geared at that. The General also spoke to a number of technology interventions. Some of the money will be diverted into that so that as we then go to what we need to do, we also in parallel attend to a number of other security interventions. So that 900 million rands is actually quite news in that it was approved in this week. So yet to start now slicing it into these and then apportion it to the plans that we have and start now monitoring the expenditure around that very, very well. I hope I've covered all other questions on my side. I'll allow the General to respond to the prosecutions to date and also and the effectiveness of the railway police, and then allow Ms. Damasani to then confirm timeframes that have been revised for the resumption of services on the Mabopane corridor, Mabopane to Pretoria, as well as the Central Line in the Western Cape. Thank you, Chair. And General, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, AA. Just in terms of responding to the question which was raised, firstly, it's with regards the utilization or ensuring that the suspects are being charged with the Criminal Matters Amendment Act. Yes, I do agree the act was approved in 2016. However, the difficulty in implementing the act, it is linked to what we call the Critical Infrastructure Act, which was only approved by Parliament last December 2019, and it has recently been assented to by the President in July this year. So during those preceding periods, members or criminals who were charged in that act were basically let scot-free. So we've seen an implementation, and as part of our integration with the police in terms of this joint operation, all the cases which we registered as from August, we've ensured that those criminals are charged in accordance with that act, because the Critical Infrastructure Act has already been passed. And I just don't have the details, but I know there is a sentence which has been issued in one of the courts in Gauteng. We can supply the details at a later stage. And the suspect was given 20 years effective for just a piece of some pieces of copper wire which he had in his possession. So it's already in motion. We're monitoring that all the cases which are related to PRASA, and not only PRASA, even all the SOEs which we are working with, together as PRASA, Telkom, and Eskom, that those who are arrested are being charged now with this Criminal Matters Amendment Act. And just to go back, sir, to one of the questions which relate to, are we not pouring money into a problem rather than solving it? I guess in terms of the stats you presented for the number of train stations, I can just give an example. It's about 530. And if you are going to sustain deployment at all the 530 stations, it will basically mean you must have 8 people to man those stations. And that is the bare minimum without doing any assessment with regards criticality and the vulnerability of that station, because all the stations differ. Some of them have got illicit access. If you can't manage to man those access with barriers, you'll definitely temporarily put home bodies there. So minimum per station, you'll require at least 8 people, so that on a 24-hour basis, you've got 2 people minimum, 2 are on standby, then they relieve each other just like that. So you sustain that. So even with our current numbers, we're not going to be able to do that function. Hence, the emphasis is also to utilize technology to overcome our problems. And these are only the stations. I have not spoken about the 2,228 kilometer network, which also needs to be protected as such. So a combination of technology and the warm bodies will enable us at least to meet this requirement to ensure that we sufficiently protect the network. Thank you.
General, this 3,100, are they employed already?
No, I've given the stats in one of the slides. We're going to advertise about 556 out of the 3,100. And it's basically within the physical security and the armed response. The only section where we could get sufficient people, it's in terms of CCTV operators and monitoring rooms. There we didn't have problems, but for physical section and also the armed response, we couldn't meet the numbers. So we're going out on re-advertisements for Eastern Cape. They've already gone out last week. For Gauteng, they should be going out between tomorrow and Friday, and also the same for KZN. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General. DG, I mean, accounting officer, you said Ms. Dabasa.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members of the NCOP, as well as our DGs present and my colleagues. I must just apologize because I've just parked next to the road to actually take the question. I am actually in the regions because I run rail and I'm rolling out with my teams in the regions, the corridors, because the decision we took as a strategy for rail is to execute corridor by corridor. So as the general is giving us the security, we then actually get CREST to help us with the stations, TEC to help us with the infrastructure, and we open the corridors. I can confirm that out of the 34 corridors that we have as PRASA, we have opened 12 since the 1st of July. We are looking at opening 9 more in the month of October, which is Transport Month. Going closer to the question that was asked by the honorable member, on the central line, on Mabopane line first, Mabopane line, the long-term project that requires the wall, and I think Hisham will speak to that in terms of where we are with the Wally tender that has already gone out to find consulting engineers to help us protect the line before we open a full rollout of the corridor for rail. we came up with two options because we can't wait for this as passengers are actually stranded on this line. We came up with two options. The one option is a hybrid option because the original option was to put buses, a full bus service into the operation for the Mapapone line, and then which involves a lot of consultation of stakeholders and availability of those buses to do so. Then we came up with a hybrid solution where we actually, to the area that is not affected from Pretoria itself towards Mapopane, we put a railway service on an integrated system. We then finish that line with a bus service to actually get people to the workplaces. And we do all the work plans and the working methods to make sure that people don't get late and they don't pay more because of this interim solution. So now, from last week, we're actually launching this corridor on the 3rd of November. So from last week, when we actually got deeper into the stakeholder engagement, the taxi industry jumped on us as a stakeholder to say, what are the benefits to us? And then we realized that it's actually creating more problems. It requires a deeper stakeholder engagement. We are engaging with the city of Tshwane. We are actually working with them in terms of a joint effort and collaboration to get the corridor to work. We have resolved that on the 3rd of November, we're opening this corridor with diesel locomotives. So we're no longer doing any of the hybrids. We are going to have a diesel locomotive solution. With diesel, though it's slightly expensive than power lines, it gives us the safety that people will go to work, number one. And number two, it also gives us the opportunity that the thieves have no option to buy. This is a model that we've used and we've seen used globally, that when you open certain corridors that are not protected with diesel, you take away the whole discussion of OHTE being robbed and the signaling system being affected. So General is deployed, a plan is for security for the corridor in Mapopane to start operating. The minister will launch it early November, but we will start the testing of the line on the 3rd of November, and we will be using a full railway diesel operation. For the central line, the stakeholder engagement is started. We are talking, our DG is talking to the DG of Human Settlements and ourselves in terms of assisting to find alternative land to actually relocate the people who are the illegal land invaders in that line. But because of the massive nature of the invasion in that line, we therefore have put forward both these projects would have rolled out in 2021, but we are bringing them forward. So end of January, we will actually put together a hybrid system for the central line, where the line towards the city will be on a diesel locomotive service, and we will do the buses as a feeder service. So there we are engaging with the stakeholders. The minister is driving the process. We also have received 80 buses from Autopex, our sister company, to actually feed into the service. And we will make sure that cost recovery is covered on our side, as well as it is not becoming more expensive for the passenger. So that's what we are doing. Both these solutions I'm putting on the table to the committee are interim solutions that there is movement in that line. The president has given us the 6 months in terms of the recovery for the economy. We are now working on those plans to actually move this interim service into a fully fledged service that will give us a full service in Mopopane and Central Line as part of our corridor rollout strategy.
Thank you, Mayor. Any comment from the I think it's Hisham?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe just, and I think my colleague has covered it well in terms of the timeframes, just an update in terms of some of the infrastructure interventions on the corridor. The question was raised earlier about the walling, the concrete walling that we are implementing along these two corridors. We've gone out to tender for the appointment of consulting engineers, and that's from stage 1 to stage 6. In other words, it's from the planning through to construction and supervision. It includes the detailed design of these walls, these reinforced walls, together with the integration of the security technology. Those tenders have since closed, honourable members, and we are in the process now of the evaluation. And we are hopeful that we would have appointment in the month of November, the latter part, so that we can accelerate the designs around this. These are, as mentioned earlier, concrete walls and require the correct design sign off by the engineers because these walls are also integrated and run parallel to some of the informal settlements that we see along the corridor, and we need to make sure that it's designed properly from a safety point of view, and then also to include the issue of the security technology. And what we have done, honourable members, and I'll conclude on this point, is when we go out to tender for the construction of these walls, commence within this 6-month time frame, as mentioned by my colleague, that we need to see action on the ground, is that we will break up these walling projects into, if I can call it, into different smaller packages, so that we can ensure that we can do projects simultaneously, but also open it more broadly to the market in terms of the implementation of these walling projects. So we are starting with Mabopane and Central Line, but certainly this will extend to other key corridors around the country, where we also faced with the same issue of the theft and the vandalism. Also, it assists with our revenue protection of our rail service, and also dealing with the encroachment and illegal, which has resulted in a number of fatalities, unfortunately. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Shen, for the addition to the responses that were given. Honourable members, I want to believe that other than the chat questions that you were expecting to receive, you are happy with the responses, but of course there is a commitment from the accounting officer of a comprehensive written response to the questions that were raised around the AG. I want to believe that I think we are looking forward to receive that detailed response in terms of the audit action plan. But more than that, as Tim, do you have a follow-up question, Tim?
Chair, I do apologise. I don't want to slow things down. One issue that that was not commented on, but I think it is important, is the media campaign. Now, the general commented that there'd been one prosecution and that there was a sentence of 20 years, which is very encouraging. It's obviously very disappointing that government took 4 years to pass the act that qualifies the Criminal Amendment Matters, the Criminal Matters Amendment Act. But anyway, that once, let's say, over the next 6 months, we have more prosecutions like this, that they embark on a media campaign that lets South African citizens know that if you steal a piece of copper from PRASA, you will go to jail for 20, 25, 30 years. I really think it's vital that we give that input to PRASA to say that people need to know that if you mess with PRASA, you are spending 20 years in jail. I think people really need to know that, because at the moment it seems that it's just something people can do and just get away with. And I think PRASA needs to show that with this legislation there's a new sheriff in town. I think that's really important. Thank you, Chair. I don't know if they can just take it on board. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Maybe from the general, the last 2 weeks there were reported cases of a father and a son that were arrested in Gauteng with the assets of PRASA, if my memory serves me well, to the value of 15 million. Maybe the general can just share light on that arrest.
Thanks, Chair. That arrest happened through through intelligence surveillance, which were done on the premises. It was done basically by PRASA protection officials, and when they were certain with the information, the police and Metro were involved so that the arrest can be executed. It was basically done as part of what we call Second-Hand Goods Enforcement Act, which necessarily doesn't need permission to go and search those premises. So it happened under that auspices, and I can guarantee that people who were arrested in that raid were being charged with criminal matters amendment act, and bail in this regard has also been posed. Thanks.
Thank you, General. Other members, let's then take this opportunity to indeed express our gratitude to the team led by the DG and also the accounting authority of PRASA for the brief and detailed elaboration in terms of the vandalism damage to PRASA infrastructure as a result of theft, arson, and malicious damage to property. As the select committee, we are mindful of the impact that this commission of criminal activities is having in terms of your broader strategic goal and focus, your mandate, and particularly the impact that it has in terms of your monetary loss, which occurs as a result of this looting of infrastructure and burning of trains along the 22,000 kilometers of track targeted by criminals. And the presentation also took us into confidence in terms of what is happening across the region, across provinces, and as by the nature of our responsibilities as the NCOP, at least we have confidence now with regard to what is happening in the Western Cape. We are happy, with the details that we received with regard to KZN, particularly and also the experience that the region has with regard to vandalism of overhead traction wires, what is happening in the Northern Line, Gauteng, particularly with regard to West Rand, what is happening in Tshwane, what is happening in the East Rand, what is happening with regard to the challenges that you have with regard to the security, the court cases, and your attempt to deal with the issues that were raised by the court with regard to the finding that was given to the institution with regard to those private security companies. But more than that, the detailed presentation on your infrastructure development approach, we are happy. We are happy with the briefing that we received, and we are looking forward to the ability on the part of PRASA to mitigate the loss that the institution is suffering, the arrest of those criminals, but more than that, the rehabilitation of our lines so that at least they can go full steam, particularly given your centrality in terms of ensuring that the working class and the poor are able to reach their workplaces. We are very critical with regard to that. So our appreciation to the presentation, but also we would want to take this opportunity to excuse you so that we are then able to deal with our final matters, which is in-house issues. Thank you, DG and your team. Thank you, the academic officer and your team. You are excused now.
Thank you,
Thank you
Chair.
very much, Chair and the honorable members.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye, colleagues.
Bye, bye.
Thank you, thank you.
Honorable members, let's deal with the minutes of the last two meetings. Is the minutes of the 14th of October and the minutes of the 7th of October. Let's start with the 7th of October. Yeah, okay, already put on screen the minutes of the 14th of October. It was a presentation from SAMSA. Those were the participants, those were the guests in the meeting. Can you go just comments and deliberations that were made by honorable members with regard to the work of the institution? Is there any correction that honorable members would want to make on these minutes? In the absence of that, can we then get a mover for that? Yes, Honorable Moshodi.
Chairperson, I just want to check. I was checking the attendance of the meeting on that day. My name is not reflecting on maybe apology or present. Where I don't know. I don't know what is happening.
I want to believe that you were.
I was not part of the meeting. To have a network.
Moshodi was part of the meeting. No, you were part of the meeting. Subega?
Thank you, Chair.
I want to believe that Moshodi was part of the meeting.
Chairperson?
Yes, the attendees of that of the meeting of the 14th of October. Can you just correct and add Moshodi there?
Okay, Chair.
Thank you. Can with that edition, can we then get a mover for the adoption of the minutes?
I move for adoption of the minutes. What correction?
Thank you, Honorable Landsman. Can we get a seconder?
I'll second, Chair.
I second, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Moshodi. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we then move to the minutes of the 7th of October? It was a presentation from Sandral on its intervention with regard to COVID-19, but also the strategy, the impact of COVID-19 on the Horizon 2030 strategy. Let's go to the attendees. There's Honorable Moshodi. This time you are not missed. In terms of guests, these are the guests. Let's go down to those were the apologies and the issues that were canvassed by members with regard to Sandral's approach to mitigate the devastating impact of COVID-19. 4.1, any reflection on 4.1, 4.2, any reflection 4.3, just issues that they raised around the pillars of the stakeholder engagement. 4.4, those were the issues that were raised. 4.6, and then those were the issues that were raised around the irregular expenditure and actions taken, list of companies per province which benefited. Those are the issues that did you receive them, Kubela?
Not yet, Chairperson.
Not yet. Can you make a follow-up with Sandra so that
maybe since the DG is here, you can pose the question to the DG why we are not receiving this question.
I want to believe that the DG, yourself and the DG will engage outside this meeting. We need that. It was the 7th. Let's agree that the DG will give us detailed, will ensure that Sandral comply with the resolution of the committee meeting of the 7th. Is there any correction? Can we then get a mover in the absence of any correction?
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. Can you get a seconder?
I support Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mushodi. Honorable members, let's then take this opportunity to indeed express a word of gratitude and appreciations to all of you for making this meeting a success. We know that we have another after a busy and hectic afternoon program, and having started this morning, let's then officially declare the meeting closed and agree that we'll meet next week. It will be provincial week, so it means we'll only be meeting after provincial week. But we are going to the house sitting now from 3 o'clock. All the best. The meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. You did a good job.
Bye-bye.
You were